It claims, quite strikingly, that under Sheikh Hasina, it's become like a family-limited company.
Mm-hmm. Focused on profit for just a few, it says.
Which, the author argues, is a complete contrast to the sacrifices of the dedicated party members, the Stichub Tamkreuz. What do you make of that starting point?
Well, it's a powerful analogy, isn't it? Comparing a political movement to a private business, it immediately signals a critique of, alleged exclusivity and maybe a departure from broader ideals.
The text says these dedicated members, the ones who sacrificed, are now disillusioned. Wait, in Kosmata Baunchi, it says, they're seeing stars totally bewildered.
Right, which suggests a feeling of betrayal, according to this author. You wonder what specific shifts or events the text points to as causing this bewilderment for those longtime members.
And the language gets even harsher. It calls the party a breeding ground for looters, casino businessmen, bank looters, and terrorists. Those are incredibly serious accusations.
Extremely serious. And it points to these opportunists. What are the sources saying about Sheikh Hasina's rule? And how is it being portrayed as essentially a betrayal of her father's legacy?
Okay, so let's kick things off with the most direct claim. This idea that her rule has brought shame, actual shame, onto her father, even while she says she's following his ideals.
It's striking how blunt it is in the material. There's that quote you highlighted.
And crucially, a Bangladesh free from Indian Breaktivad. That word, Ganglatai, suggesting dominance or undue influence.
Okay, so that's the supposed ideal. But then the sources paint a very different picture of today under Sheikh Hasina.
Totally different. They say democracy is, well, a joke. Elections are just staged drama.
Wow.
And that Bangladesh has essentially become a Panfaraka vassal state of India. That's the plan.
Vassal state. And do they give specifics to back that up, this idea of being subservient to India?
They do. They point to things like the Kenanura fire, the Feni River water, being given away without a formal treaty.
Okay.
They mention the sort of silence on killings of Bangladeshis at the border.
Right.
And the lack of pushback on India building the Panaplai, the Tipaimuk Dam. The implication is always that these are concessions, sacrifices made to keep India's support for her rule.
Okay, so that's the foreign policy angle. But the sources also dig into the Awami League itself, don't they? The party. Yeah, they do. They talk about a real transformation or maybe degradation within the party under her leadership.
How so? What's the contrast they're drawing?
Well, they paint this picture of the old Awami League as, courageous, worker-friendly, really connected to the people.
The classic image.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now, according to these texts, it's become a den of looters, casino businessmen, bank looters, and terrorists. I mean, it's incredibly harsh language.
That is severe. And it suggests disillusionment within the party, too.
Definitely. They even include this quote, supposedly from...
Really hits home, that sense of betrayal among the original guard, maybe.
Yeah, it suggests a deep unease.
Okay, so another huge theme in these sources seems to be the whole idea of democracy being undermined.
Oh, absolutely. They don't pull any punches there. They directly accuse Sheikh Hasina of basically dismantling democracy to, stay in power without legitimate votes.
Is there a key quote on that?
There is.
Self has been ripped out just to hold on to power.
That's a pretty damning claim. And it goes beyond just elections, right? They talk about institutions.
Yes, exactly. The claim is a sort of systematic misuse of everything, that the Constitution, the Election Commission, the entire administration, all twisted, supposedly, to just protect her family's power.
Which leads to that really profound question the sources raise. What would Mian-Sen himself think if he saw this?
Right. And they offer this incredibly dramatic hypothetical answer.
Yeah, that one really stopped me. They suggest he might say, "Ain't not mine. This is a nightmare." I mean,
attributing that sentiment to him is incredibly potent.
it is. And the reasoning they give is that his party, once this symbol of hope for ordinary people, has now become associated with Sagavan.
Yeah. They list all these negative things. Casinos, extortion, bank looting, violence.
Yeah, people supposedly using Sheikh Hasina's name for personal gain through extortion, contracts, media manipulation.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
It paints a picture of, alleged systemic corruption where the party structure itself, in this view, has become a vehicle for enrichment for some rather than political service.
And there's that really poignant question the text claims comes from the grassroots. Is this why we did politics in the name of the text ever, Doug Spyglass?
That cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It uses the weight of any Sheikh's legacy as a measuring stick and finds the present situation wanting, at least according to this analysis. It frames the whole critique around this idea of betraying the original purpose.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to democratic principles. The text describes Sheikh Hasina's rule as a barricade-enclosed, Tamham-cutting, a governing machine behind barriers.
Implying it's closed off, defensive.
And that any criticism leads to really severe consequences. Imprisonment, disappearances, journalists being silenced. It's a grim picture of the political climate described. It is. The author explicitly contrasts this with Demonok's dream of a democratic Bangladesh, labeling Sheikh Hasina's rule as autocratic. Nah, hold on. A direct accusation of authoritarianism.
And it goes further, claiming that before August 5th, 2024, democracy in Bangladesh had become laughable, voting a joke, elections just staged drama.
I mean, that's a complete dismissal of the democratic process as it supposedly existed then. To call voting a joke, that implies a total loss of faith in the system's legitimacy from this perspective.
The argument is that the very core, the gun or backbone of politics, as polling town aside democracy, has been, well, broken.
Undermined, yeah. The text alleges she stayed in power without real popular consent. Gun in town without votes.
Awami. By supposedly using state institutions, the Constitution, Election Commission, the administration, all tools it claims to protect her family system.
Ahab passed not a possibly a machine to protect the family system. That phrase suggests, from the author's viewpoint, that state power wasn't serving the nation, but rather consolidating power for a specific group, allegedly her family and close allies.
Which raises serious questions, according to this text, about the independence of those key institutions.
Definitely. Now, moving to what seems like the core accusation, this alleged betrayal of Dekuro Kufration of Felatoreme's own ideals.
The text uses such strong language. It says when she returned to politics, she first strangled
His ideals.
That's a very visceral image. It conveys a sense of violent rejection of her father's foundational principles, as the author sees it.
And then those rhetorical questions. Could this have happened? Did Beksa ever imagine his daughter would become such a misruler?
It really emphasizes the author's sense of shock and, frankly, disappointment. It frames the alleged actions as almost unthinkable, given the legacy she inherited. There's even that imagined quote from Bikaran, "Kongor from beyond the grave."
Right. From Passion Closing Petiven up on Love Patanga Patanka Pantanga Pantaksha, come with it. You took an oath in my name and destroyed my ideals.
Wow. That's using his voice to deliver the ultimate condemnation in this narrative.
Precisely. And it leads into that statement. History is compelled to say today, if Ivan Konakatan were alive, a tyrannical ruler like Sheikh Hasina would not have been born. It positions this view as a historical inevitability.
Okay, let's look at foreign policy. The text claims once wanted Bangladesh free from Indian dominance.
But it argues, under Sheikh Hasina, it became the opposite, a feudal state, a Kayapanolaniki, basically subservient to India.
That's a major claim. What specific examples does the author give to back this up?
Several specific points are raised. Giving away Fani River water without a treaty, supposedly.
Yeah, okay.
Remaining silent, allegedly, on killings of Bangladeshis at the border by Indian forces. Accepting India's Farakka barrage, which the text claims turns rivers into deserts. And also silence on India's Tipaimuk Dam project.
So a series of alleged concessions or failures to act in Bangladesh's interest, all linked to India.
Yes, presented as evidence of this subservience.
And the reason given.
Exactly. The author argues that this support came at an immense cost.
What cost?
The claim is she sacrificed everything for it control over the administration, the army, judiciary, election commission, even the Awami League party itself.
Basically trading national sovereignty and institutions for political survival, according to this view.
That's the argument, and it mentions that derogatory title allegedly given by the people.
It sums up the bitterness in that accusation.
It does. It's meant to signify a complete loss of independent standing in the eyes of the author and those they claim to represent.
So what about the impact on society? The text paints a bleak picture here, too. Bangladesh has entered an undeclared autocracy.
The consequence, the author argues, is that future generations are growing up without understanding the real meaning of the liberation war or democracy.
Instead, what are they learning?
According to the text, fear. Fear related to Hafizat, fear of the Digital Security Act, fear of even speaking Sheikh Hasina's name critically.
And the prediction for her historical legacy is, well, brutal. That she'll be remembered as a cursed name.
Someone who, the text claims, misused her father's name to imprison the whole nation.
It also lists some truly disturbing specific allegations to support this climate of fear.
Definitely is.
The core argument is that Sheikh Hasina's leadership is portrayed as a fundamental betrayal of her father's democratic ideals, leading Bangladesh down a path of alleged authoritarianism, corruption, and compromised sovereignty.
With severe consequences, the author claims, for the nation and its people.
And it's crucial, as we always say, for you listening to remember this is one specific, very strong viewpoint from the source material provided.
Absolutely. It's an interpretation, a critique, and should be understood as such. We're just unpacking that argument here.
Hopefully this discussion gets you thinking about the weight of such criticisms, their potential impact on Bangladesh's political future, and how different people view the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.